Hey everyone, it's your host Henry June from jacksonslegalnursinggroup.com. I hope that you have your caffeine ready because we are going to go into the history portion of the defense medical examination. Most people think that the defense medical examination starts when the doctor reaches for their reflex hammer, their goniometer, or the tuning fork. But it all starts when they first walk in and everyone starts chatting. I've identified 3 red flags that you have to know before you go to your next defense medical examination. I'm going to break these into 3 standalone topics so that you can spot them too. Let's begin. Red flag number 1 is the patient's memory test of old records. The first thing that I'm looking for as a nurse observer is the clinical verification gap. In a lot of medical examinations, the defense doctor is getting a dump of medical records set in their lap. Now, as a nurse, we know that the medical records are important so that the doctors can get a well-rounded picture of what type of client they're going to be receiving in their medical examination. The red flag that I see on a routine basis is that the doctor is trying to test the client's memory of old medical records or accidents, old surgeries, you name it, rather than trying to figure out and assess the patient. For example, say for instance, a patient had an accident back in 2002. They're going to ask, oh, hey, did you have neck pain before? Sometimes they're not looking for the clinical data to back up the current condition. They're looking for discrepancies to highlight in their report. One of the major things in a defense medical examination as an independent observer, you want to make sure that the physician isn't interrogating the client. Red flag number 2, the ghost history. As a nurse, we know that the best way to understand someone's symptoms is to listen, to have that verbal dialogue with them so you can better understand what is going on, what is hurting them, what is aching, how has this affected their everyday living. But often in some DME reports, you might find a doctor ghostwriting, where they lift information that is in the medical records and place it in their report. While the observer is there, they know that the history portion only took about 3 minutes, 4 minutes tops. But often in a DME final report from doctors, you might see that the physician wrote down that they communicated with the client for an extended period of time, had an extensive, comprehensive history report done. However, when you were there, none of that happened. That doctor is ghostwriting. For the nurse observer, and then for you, attorneys out there, the nurse observer's stopwatch and heavy documentation, and that is the smoking gun that you need so that you can discredit the physician. This is why it is important to have a nurse observer write a rebuttal report for you so that you can catch them off guard. Last but not least is the third red flag, and that is the leading question narrative. The standard medical question is an open-ended question to the client slash patient. An example would be, tell me about your pain. But questions that should be looked at with a skeptical eye would be, you're back to your normal, right? This doesn't prevent you from fill in the blank. At this time, the doctor is literally writing the history for the patient. Maybe the client is nervous. Maybe they want to be a good patient. One of the things that I talked about in previous videos is that you want to make sure that the client is prepped and make sure that they understand that this doctor is not on their side. They're not a treating physician. You want to make sure that the client is calm, they're prepped, and that they are confident going into the medical examination. Now, before we sign off, I do want to let new viewers or attorneys outside of the state of Florida that have clients in this state know that you can have a nurse observer attend their medical examination. This is under the Florida and Civil Procedure 1.360, which allows the observer to attend the compulsory medical examination. But here is the catch. While the rule gives the right for an examination, it does not allow the physician to use this as a interrogation. With Rule 1.360, it requires the defense to specify what is the scope of the examination. As a nurse observer, I am there to guard the truth, to make sure that the physician isn't using this as an interrogation, and that the doctor is not stepping outside of their scope. Standing in as a independent observer is important. This is why even if you are miles away in another state, you should have someone that represents your client at their medical examination so that they are the eyes and ears to write a report and send you an audio recording, write a rebuttal of the statements from the physician. With that in mind, you should look at Jackson's Legal Nursing Group because they stand guard over the truth in a medical examination. Now that we talked about the history portion of the defense medical examination, we know that this is where the narrative is set. Attorneys out of state or in state and nurses out there know that as a nurse observer, you are the eyes and ears for the attorney. And with Florida Rule of Civil Procedure 1.360, we are allowed to attend these medical examinations within the state. Now that you know how to spot these red flags on the history portion of the medical exam, next time we're going to talk about the physical portion of the examination, which is the last 30 minutes of the exam. And make sure that you know what to look for if the doctor is doing the physical examination test correctly. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next episode.